Working? Looks like it is. Let some people join. Let me send out some notifications here. It's just a second. Just sending this out a few spots, then we'll get started here. Just a couple more. Got some people tuning in. That's good. I know it's Halloween. West Coast, they're probably still out trick-or-treating. Let's see. Let's go with that. Send it out here. Go ahead and put it in here. Now one more spot and we'll be ready to go. All right, that's probably good for now. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for joining War Room After Dark here on Halloween. Goingfor2.com. My name's at not Duck Hodges on Twitter, and we usually go through some of my favorite game scripts from a fantasy betting, mostly DFS perspective. Tonight we will, I think, a special theme kind of be the weather. I think we have 5 games where we're going to see some inclement weather, and I think those will be the ones best suited to spend the next 30, 45 minutes, and then we can kind of pivot off that. But if you have any fantasy questions, betting questions, get them into the chat. I'll try to peek at that and try to answer them as I go, or at the very end. We'll see. But a quick thing about weather, if you haven't been paying attention, basically the Midwest tomorrow is going to be hit with some strong winds and some very cold weather, which is going to make a lot of these games pretty interesting from fantasy perspective. If it's betting, you've probably already seen the team or the game totals move down drastically. I think, for example, Cincinnati, I think they're playing Tennessee. I believe that game's gone down about 5 points. Basically, any of these games that are in the weather have probably gone down about a touchdown total. That's going to have some pretty big impact. When it comes to weather, I think we're always more concerned about the wind. The rain, cold, snow type thing doesn't always affect them. Maybe it affects footing and stuff like that. But really, the wind is what's going to mess up the passing, especially deep passes. And I think with what we were kind of targeting, what I was targeting at least towards middle of the week, kind of drastically changed just because of the weather. And you'll hear various camps and people I respect in the industry talk differently. Some people are will hang their hat on weather. Some people say with everyone kind of considering it changes ownership, they don't really weigh it too much. To me, I don't try to put everything into one bucket. I kind of go through the game environment, and in a nutshell, we'll go into each game a little bit more detail. But I do think, for the most part, it is trying to evaluate how these teams like to attack, how they were expected to attack, and see if high winds are going to affect that. And let's jump into a game right now, the Vikings at Packers, and I don't have the current totals. I could probably pull that up. I had it at 55, and as right now, if you bear with me, of course, when I want to pull something up quickly, it doesn't do it. So it was around 55 total. It would have been one of the highest total games on the week. It is now at 50, so down 5 points. Still a relatively high total, but these teams played in week 1. Adams had his way. Thielen got there in garbage time, but basically the Packers dominated. They're still about a 7-point favorite, and that's probably going to be the case. But to me, with these wins expected to be, and I don't, I closed it just on how much wind you thought that, but I would check everyone's favorite weatherman on Twitter, Kevin Roth. If you don't know who he is, he kind of analyzes the games from a DFS perspective, and he kind of rates it from a scale of like green to red. Red obviously being the worst. I think this one was one of the reds, meaning we're anticipating 25-ish miles per hour consistent wind, and then gusts higher than that. Um, Obviously, that was going to affect kicking, which doesn't matter for DFS, but also it will affect the deep passing. And I will say this from just like a regular redraft fantasy football league, I would still play your studs. So don't overthink it. If you have a Devonte Adams, I have him in a couple leagues. I'm going to still play him. I mean, he's in a great spot. It's just a matter of what you think, how these people are going to attack. And so for me, going into this game, I did obviously like the Packers side. I was thinking Rodgers, Jamal Williams is going to be the lead back. Liked him. Um, Adams, Tanyan, and then considering bringing this back with whoever Jair Alexander doesn't shadow, which probably would have been Jefferson. And then with this weather news, I'm trying to think. I still weather wind doesn't affect the pass or the running backs, and if they're pass catching backs, which both Dalvin and Jamal Williams are, I think it actually raises their potential here. So I do like them as well. I think I'm going to be off a lot of the pass catchers. To me, Devonte Adams is still in a really good spot, but it's just tough. He gets so many targets, and you'll see him. He sees it short, intermediate, and long, so he could probably still get there. But if we're talking from daily fantasy perspective on DraftKings, he's close to $9,000, which basically means he needs, let's see, to get 3 times his amount, 6 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, which he can certainly do. That's just tough to bank on week in, week out. So I was trying to look for a reason to fade him. This weather might be an angle for me to do that. Justin Jefferson, I don't think he's going to get the Jair Alexander coverage. So if I am going to play a Vikings pass catcher, I would consider him. I know he's decently priced on DraftKings, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But a lot of people aren't playing the Chiefs, but they're not in a um, inclement weather situation. I think Tyreek Hill's right around the same price as Justin Jefferson. So if you're asking me would I rather at any point have Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson, I think it's pretty easy. Everyone says Tyreek. And so here in these situations, I'm not going to overthink it too much. If I have an opportunity to play someone like Hill, even though there's blowout potential, I'm probably going to try to pivot there. So I'm going to look at those salaries, and instead of, a lot of times I try to be matchup focused. Here I might just play who I think is in the long term the best player, which would be Tyreek Hill, obviously. But long story short here, I do think the running backs, especially because they're pass catching backs, the shorter pass game, intermediate pass game is going to be much more in effect, much more that's the only way they'll be able to move the ball if the winds get up to 25+% miles per hour. Another game that I think isn't as inclement, but still right around the 25-ish mile an hour wind range is the Titans versus Bengals, which was a game total of, according to, it would be Adam Thielen with Alexander. Yeah, and actually, that's in week 1, Thielen had his way with Jair, and going back, I don't know if Jair covered him the entire time, but Thielen got there. It wasn't garbage time. They're maybe letting off the gas. But in the last month, Jair's really come on. He's never really been a shadow corner except for the last month, and so now he's teetering on the type of corner I would avoid. So it could just be a different type of person. That's a different type of player from early on in the season. Bengals are also down like 4 or 5 points on the team total. And like I said, I don't think the wind's going to be as strong here. And this was one of my favorite games. I still think like I said, there's about 5 games where the weather, we can't really avoid them all. Here, I think it's it's still playable just with how both of these teams like to operate. Um, for the Cincinnati side, Gio, he didn't do much last week on the ground, but he did catch a lot of balls, which when doesn't, like I said, doesn't matter. So Gio's still in play. Tyler Boyd out of the slot still. He's still going to catch short to intermediate routes. Still like Burrow. Higgins and Green are both kind of intermediate to deep pass catchers. Might hurt them a little bit, so I might be light there. But I did like everyone except the tight ends on the Cincinnati side before the weather came in. And then on the Tennessee side, one of the things I was really wanting to do this week, because I think Derrick Henry's going to be one of the most popular plays, I wanted to try to I want to try to get off him and avoid him as much as possible. The Bengals in the last 2 years have been notoriously stingy. Or sorry, the Bengals have been just like one of the worst on the ground. And early on in the year, it held true. They had a lot of injuries. They still have injuries, but they've gotten some people back. And in the last month, if you kind of look at their DVOA, they've really improved where they're about average. They're actually slowing running backs down a little bit. And let's see, they've had some good matchups where they've played against Hunt, James Robinson, Jonathan Taylor. So they played good running backs and they've held them all in check. And obviously Derrick Henry can beat any defense, so it's risky. But to me, this might be where I hang my hat. My hot take of the week might be Derrick Henry just doesn't get there. He doesn't have that pass catching floor that makes me comfortable, and he's the second highest priced running back on the slate, right next to Kamara. So we'll get there, but I still think I'll hang my hat, even though with the inclement wind, it might make sense. So I'm playing with fire with Henry, but I might be trying to avoid him, and instead, I still like this matchup for Tannehill, AJ Brown, and Jonnu. AJ and Jonnu both operate shortish to intermediate, so I don't think it hurts them too much. And Tannehill always kind of relies on efficiency anyway, so I still think both these teams can kind of click, even if the wind gets up there. So this might be one I still look at, even with the wind. Another one that I had a lot of interest in was the Raiders at the Browns, and that was at game total of 54.5 when I saw it earlier in the week, and now it's at 48. So wow, they've gone down a whole touchdown, and this is just kind of a middling game. And with the high level wins, you have Baker and Carr, and it's hard to trust both of them because both of them are not really known as elite QBs, even though Derek's definitely been playing well this year, but the win's going to be a factor for him, especially for I guess their best outside weapon, which is Ruggs. I think he's going to be rendered kind of just inoperative because of this. The deep passing is just going to be gone. But still, there's good spots if you're like Kareem Hunt's been getting like 90% of the carries. He's going to still be working there, and he gets the short pass catching out of the backfield. So he was a great play. He's still a great play. The Browns, I still think I have interest in Jarvis. I think a lot of people will go to Higgins, which is fine. I'm still trying to decide if I want to get there, but Jarvis might be with the lower A dot, might be the better play. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else on that side. Bryant last week, as an aside, I know a lot of people followed along with me on Twitter as I got close to taking down one of the GPPs, and it was because I had Bryant as my tight end when I got word that Njoku and him would be splitting time. I just shifted from Njoku, who was 3,000, down to Bryant was 2,500, and just opened up a couple rosters for me where I had Lockett and Juan late night, and then I had DeAndre Hopkins, and I had a huge lead going into like the fourth quarter of that Seattle Seahawks game, and it went to overtime, and it was just a disaster. But I digress. But we almost got there. But Brian, I think, is still in play. I think he'll be a little bit more popular. It's hard to chase. He had 5 targets, and 2 of those were touchdowns last week, so it's a little point chasey in my opinion. But I think he is the best value tight end if you want to get there. And then one of the best plays to me, Waller. He won the best tight end plays. I think he's still going to get fed, and he runs intermediate routes, so the wind shouldn't be too much of an effect there, and they have to throw it to someone. Um, this really put me on Josh Jacobs as well. I think the Cleveland Browns are trying to get healthy on the defensive line, but they're still pretty soft, and so Josh Jacobs to me, I think it could be a pretty under-owned flyer there. Another game I didn't have much interest in, but with the weather, the Bills at Patriots, trying to think about, because I know Gilmore's out, Edelman's out, so Jacoby Myers, that was a cheap flyer. You could play Diggs now that he won't be shadowed by Gilmore. To me, just with the weather, it's really tough. I might still try to get Diggs in there, to be honest, and I'm still toying around with Myers, but it's hard to really trust Cam at this point. Their defenses might be in play. Um, that one's pretty tough to me, just with what's been going on there. And it was a team total of 44 when I made this note. Let's see what they're at now. Patriots down to 40. So yeah, everything's kind of going down here, and that's pretty low total. So that might be a stay away. Last game I wanted to really talk about, there's going to be weather, is an afternoon game. It's the Saints at the Bears. It was already a low total of 44, and it is at, okay, it didn't go down much, 43 now. And I think this is a game I'm still going to play. Michael Thomas is out, and I think I've talked about this every week. I've just been playing Kamara, just not even thinking about it. And here, it's just the same thing. I think the weather actually helps him. He's still going to get his 10 targets out of the backfield, and the Bears are actually not stout against the run, especially on the off tackle runs, and that's what Kamara does best. That's where they get their most success. So I think this is a great spot for Kamara. If a lot of people are playing Derrick Henry, they'll probably also be playing Jamal Williams, also be playing Gio. They won't be able to get in Kamara. So that's a pretty good pivot. I still think Kamara is going to be pretty high owned, but something to think about there. The pass catchers, I know last week a lot of people went to Cooks or Traquan just with the wind there, and Breeze's short passing prowess. I think I'll probably be staying away and just ride Kamara from that standpoint. For the Bears, I'm toying around with the idea of putting Allen Robinson back in my pool, to be honest. I know he just got cleared from a concussion. I think he's the only way they can move the ball this wind. I think I was actually hoping he wouldn't play because a lot of people would be on Mooney. And Mooney's a deep pass catcher. He would have been rendered a little bit more inoperative. Now with Allen back in, I don't think Mooney's going to be as high owned, but something to still consider. I think, Marshawn Lattimore is someone we've ever shied away from. So I might still get there just because you can't avoid that. We just named 5 games, and 3 are going to be extremely popular. 4 actually. Can't avoid them all, but I will have some builds. But initially, I was kind of avoiding the Chiefs because I think it's going to be a blowout. But I think there is value on the Jets side. Just as a quick discussion, I do like, and I don't think we have word if Gore's playing yet. Either way, I think LaMichael Pirine going to get a majority of the carries, and if Gore's out, to me, he's a great tournament play. And also Denzel Mims is, I think, 3,500 on Draftkings, and he's going to be their number 1 wide receiver. I don't expect much from this Jets offense, but being able to do even a little bit would just go a long way. So getting Mims and Pirine, then obviously I'm probably going to get Tyreek Hill back in there. Probably not Kelsey because I do like Kittle and Waller. There's the expensive ones in great spots, but I wouldn't blame anyone. That's the type of play that wins somebody some money. So wouldn't hate that. Probably wouldn't go to their lower owned options like Robinson or Hardman just because this game could get out of hand quickly, and I would rather bank my money on the playmakers like Hill and Kelsey. But that is to say, and without going through all the games, the 49ers at the Seahawks was the highest total before. It's definitely the highest total now, and it's one of those games I'm going to make sure I'm overloaded on. I know the Seahawks side is expensive, but I think the 49ers side's pretty cheap, so you can offset it. But I'm going to have a lot of GPP lineups where I am focusing in on some of these games with the better environments from weather standpoint, whether they're in the dome, like Colts, Lions, or Dolphins has good weather. Like, surprisingly, the Broncos seems to be okay weather. What am I missing one? The Chiefs talked about. So yeah, he's got a couple games there, but I will try to focus in on them where I think there's a little safer scoring environment because you just don't know, and you're going to see on Monday or Sunday night people touting, hey, told you to avoid the weather, or hey, I told you not to avoid it. But each one of these is going to have its own unique effects, and if you really want to get galaxy brain and go deep, I saw someone post that the Cleveland wind direction is in line with the way the stadium faces, so they think at least for once a quarter, one team will be into the wind, which is going to be tough. Then they'll be with the wind, which is going to help deep passing. So they were thinking that's actually going to be a good environment for deep passing. But I think the wind swirls in stadiums, so I'm not going to go there. But something to keep in mind if you really want to dig in deep there, where's the directions coming from, things like that. I'm sure someone's going to get into that fun stuff. But real quick, we can talk about the Sunday night game. I don't think there's anything really Monday night too much I want to talk about. Sunday night should be interesting. Cowboys just going to be hands off. You don't need an analysis there. But with Philly, I think you can play Wentz. It sounds like Goddard's back. Boston Scott's still the starter. Jalen Rager's back, Fulgham. So I think that's a spot if you're playing the Thursday night football through Monday night football slate. I think you definitely want to have plenty of exposure to the Eagles side because I think someone's going to smash there. It's just a matter of who, and I don't really think they're going to be the type to let off against their division rival, the Cowboys. They'll probably just beat them into submission. And let me look at the chat. Let me get a drink and then look at the chat here. If anyone has any questions, send them in. Let's see here. And while I'm waiting to see if anyone has any questions here, one thing that's interesting, Monday night, I think a lot of people will be on Mike Evans. He's cheap. Godwin's out. You got one more week before Brown comes in and just makes a mess of everything. But he's playing James Bradbury. I think that's going to be, right now, I think it might be a hands-off for me. Maybe you could go there and cash, but I think GPPs, and historically, I saw this before getting on, that Evans just gets shut down by Bradbury. So to me, that's something I'm not really interested in doing. He's probably the only solid play I wanted from that game, besides maybe the Bucs defense. But something to keep in mind there. But I do think if you're just playing the main slate or early only slate, you can build a lineup with 49ers, and we know who to play there. Garoppolo's cheap. Ayuk's actually expensive. Kittle's expensive, but you can play Kendrick Bourne. Sounds like all the running back, well, not all the running backs, but it sounds like Coleman's back, which will muddy the waters, but I do like their passing game. You can play, sounds like the Seahawks running backs are going to be a timeshare, but you could pay up for Metcalf or Lockett. You could then squeeze in like a Chargers. They have some cheap ones. Broncos, I'm trying to think, with Lindsey back, probably not. Dolphins, Rams, I think, yeah, you could play some there. It's a little risky with Tua. Colts, Jonathan Taylor's in a good spot. T.Y. Hilton's dirt cheap. Lions, probably wouldn't go there, but then Jets, cheap ones. So long story short, if you are concerned about the weather, I think there's some good environments and good plays for these non-ones. So you can really stack those up, and I'll be certainly doing that, and then maybe mixing and matching with some of these weather-related ones there, if you wanted to go that route. But I'm trying to think if there's any other games. If not, I'll let everyone get back to trick-or-treating their Halloween. But certainly, if you do have any start-sit questions, things, I would say, if you're making DFS lineups, I would wait till tomorrow morning. Try to get the most accurate weather predictions possible because some could change overnight. And certainly, if the wind's dying down or if it's coming in later or earlier and just shifts things, that's certainly something to consider. So I'm not going to set any lineups or get locked in until probably couple hours before kickoff, and then just try to create these, because I don't want to assume whether it's gonna be or not going to be a benefit or detriment, and then some just shift just with information. So hold out as long as possible if you can. Shake off the Halloween hangover. Get up and set those lineups. That would be my only advice. And then just pick a. We went through 5 games with weather. I'd say get conviction. Pick how you think it's going to play out. Whether you think um, the wind is going to affect it or not. And like I said, the running backs, I think most of these games have good running back opportunities, so that doesn't stop you there. Maybe just play wide receivers from the non-windy games and the running backs from the windy ones. You're going to be with so much value, especially at the wide receiver side. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity to fit these in. So even if you're worried about this, it's not going to make you lineup building difficult or anything like that. Let's see. Question: Justin Jefferson. Oh yeah, we talked about that. I don't think he's getting the Jair coverage. Just tough. How much uh, Cousins can move the ball. Yeah, Thielen will be on Alexander. So, all right. I think that's it for the questions. So happy Halloween, everybody. Once again, check me out at goingfor2.com. Follow me on Twitter at notduckhodges. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out Saturday night. Happy Halloween, and I will see you next week. Good luck.